This is Sports Takes with Nate Skates. No spin, just straight sports. It all comes down to this. The college football playoff starts Friday night when Alabama goes to Norman to take on Oklahoma. On today's episode of the show, I'll break down all those first-round matchups and give you my picks for one of the biggest weekends in all of sports. It's wild to think that the entire college football season is pretty much over. We are all the way to the first round of the college football playoff. It kind of feels like we just started the season, but here we go. And that's kind of the way it works every year. But we've got one game on Friday night. That's the Alabama-Oklahoma game. And you've got 3 games on Saturday. So don't ask me to do anything because I already have plans. But we're going to break down these matchups. So going into the first round, there's something you got to remember about last year's college football playoff. In last year's playoff, which was the first year of the 12-team playoff format, every team in the first round who had a home game won that game. The home field advantage in the playoff is huge. So the first game is the Oklahoma-Alabama game. This is one of 2 rematches in the first round of the playoff. So you have Alabama and Oklahoma. You have Tulane and Ole Miss. Oklahoma beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa on November 15th, 23-21. And I'm hearing a lot of people say Alabama is actually the favorite in this game. Despite being the lower seed, being the road team, a lot of people are picking Alabama. And there's good reason for that, you know, it's really difficult to beat a good team twice in one season, but a lot of people are primarily pointing to Alabama outgained Oklahoma 406 yards to 212 yards in their first matchup. Ty Simpson threw for 326 yards in that game. So you have a lot of people say, well, if Alabama hadn't turned the ball over 3 times in that game, if they hadn't missed a field goal, they would have won the game. My counter to that is, well, Oklahoma forced 3 turnovers. They capitalized off those turnovers, and they were all over Ty Simpson. They had 4 sacks in that game. That's part of their nation-leading, tied with Texas A&M, 41 sacks on the season. So this is who Oklahoma is. I mean, they lead with their defense. There's not a lot of offense going on, and we'll get into those stats in a second. But I think that game, the initial game earlier in the year, is a little bit of what we're going to see this week. Now, this game is not going to be in Tuscaloosa. This game is in Norman. Last year, Oklahoma crushed Alabama 24-3 in Norman. That ended the Crimson Tide's hopes of making the 2024 college football playoff. So Alabama's going to have to go into this place that was a house of horrors for them last year on a Friday night, the first college football playoff game. Those fans are going to be bonkers. They're going to be wild. And they're going to have to stand up to this Oklahoma pass rush in Norman. They're going to have to make these pre-snap calls with that crowd going. So this is not going to be the same friendly environment you had in November where you already lost. Now, when you compare these teams, Alabama looks like the better team on paper. That is probably why a lot of people are picking Alabama. Alabama statistically is a better team than Oklahoma is, but the game isn't played in statistics, it's played on the field. Take the offensive statistics we talked about in the previous matchup. Yes, Alabama drastically outgained Oklahoma in that game. What people forget is Oklahoma held Alabama to just 57 yards on its last 4 possessions. Alabama is not going to be able to run the ball. They don't run the ball well. Jam Miller may or may not play in this game. Both teams have had a lot of injuries, still a lot of guys on the injury report. But they're not going to run the ball on Oklahoma, who has the 5th-ranked rushing defense. They may be able to throw the ball like they did in the previous matchup. They have the 23rd-ranked passing offense. Oklahoma's passing defense is good, but sometimes vulnerable. Their 31st-ranked passing defense, Now, Oklahoma's offense is, like I said, anemic. They struggle in the pass and the run. This is the worst offense probably in the entire playoff field. quarterback John Mateer, he completes only 62.1% of his passes. He's only got 12 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. He is a little bit of a threat to run. He has 7 rushing touchdowns. You see him make some plays in the red zone, big third downs. When he does throw the ball, he's got Isaiah Satania to throw to. Satania leads the Sooners with 65 grabs, 948 yards, 7 touchdowns. The guy is electric. Now, they're going to be going up against the Alabama defense, which is also tough. They rank 11th in defensive yards per game, 6th in passing defense, 12th in points per game. They do struggle to stop the run. They are 36th in rushing defense. You can run the ball on Alabama. Now, whether Oklahoma is able to do that or not, it remains to be seen. Alabama's got some injury issues. Defensive lineman L.T. Overton has been out for a few weeks with a medical issue, so that may free up some running lanes. And going into the playoff, these were 2 teams that were banged up, and that definitely had an effect on them the last few games of the season. Oklahoma only managed 17 points in each of its last 2 games, relying on its defense as it did all season to beat Missouri and LSU. Alabama, on the other hand, beat Auburn in the Iron Bowl by 1 touchdown, then had the big loss in the SEC championship game. So these are 2 teams that have kind of limped into the postseason. We'll see if the rest for Oklahoma paid off. We'll see if Alabama's kind of recovered after that SEC championship game. So maybe you ask me, okay, Nate, who are you picking? It's like I said earlier, it is really hard to beat a good team twice in one season. Ask Alabama. They lost to Georgia in the SEC championship game. This isn't the first time Georgia's done that to Alabama. 2021. Alabama beat Georgia pretty bad. I was at that game. It was brutal. Then in the national championship game in Indianapolis, Georgia won that game. It is really hard to beat a good team twice in one season. So it's possible. The Crimson Tide, this is Alabama. We've all seen it. Alabama could come out here and go off. Oh, everybody disrespected us. We've got to come out and really show people what we're about. That's possible. This is not Nick Saban's Alabama team. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think Oklahoma has the home field advantage. The crowd's going to be wild. They've got the vaunted pass rush. I say that Oklahoma is going to win this game. Now, going forward, Oklahoma is probably not going to go deep into the playoff. They're probably not going to beat Indiana. The offense is going to hold them back. But in this game, at home, give me Oklahoma's defense over Alabama's offense. Now, the first game on Saturday is Miami going to Kyle Field, going to Texas A&M. Why they decided to make this game at 11 a.m. instead of being a late afternoon night game, I don't know. This is going to be one of the closest matchups of the entire playoff. It's very difficult to even make a pick in this game, but that's what I'm going to do here. So breaking down this matchup, Miami and Texas A&M have 2 common opponents. So we have 2 data points we can compare the 2. The first is Miami beat Notre Dame 24-21 in week 1. Texas A&M beat Notre Dame 41-40 in week 2. The other data point, maybe less known, is Miami beat Florida 26-7 in week 4. Texas A&M beat Florida 34-17 in week 6. So really, both of those games were similar result. Miami's defense looks a little bit better in those games. Texas A&M's offense looks a little bit better in those games. And that's really the way the matchup works out. Miami probably has a little bit better defense than Texas A&M has, and Texas A&M probably has a little bit better offense than Miami has. So talking about that Miami defense, Miami's defense is ranked 10th overall in yards per game. They have the 7th ranked rushing defense. And that's a stat I want to talk about the playoff at large a little bit. You notice these playoff teams, typically the playoff teams have good defenses. These teams are led primarily by defense. But a specific stat I want to look at is in rushing yards per game, 1 through 7 are all playoff teams. If you can stop the run really well, you're a playoff team. You got Texas Tech, James Madison, Indiana, Georgia, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Miami, 1 through 7. Stop the run, go to the playoff. We'll see how that shapes out in these games. Now, where Texas A&M's defense is a little bit better than Miami's is in pass defense. Miami's pass defense is about 30th, Texas A&M about 21st, and that is probably because Texas A&M, as I mentioned in the previous segment, is tied for first with Oklahoma with 41 sacks. They get after the quarterback. They have All-American Cassius Howell, who, by the way, was not a highly recruited guy, transferred into Texas A&M, and now look what he's doing. So, for Miami's defense is primarily led, they have 2 good pass rushers themselves. You've got Reuben Bain Jr., and you have got Akeem Mesidor. Both of these guys can get after the quarterback. And it's not just the sacks, which, that gets overblown sometimes. It's the pressure rate. These guys' pressure rate is through the roof. So make sure you get up early on Saturday. Watch this game. You are going to see some defensive studs in this game. But it's not just on defense. On offense, let's talk about Miami's offense. You're obviously led by quarterback Carson Beck. Beck ended the year really efficient, really consistent. Down the stretch, really high completion percentage. I mean, even on the season, he's got a 74.7 completion percentage. Had 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, about 3,000 yards passing. Beck throws to one of the best wide receivers in college football, in my opinion, a freshman, Malachi Toney. If you have not watched Miami play football, watch this game, watch Malachi Toney. The guy is dominant. I mean, he's really fast, really quick, great hands. I really enjoy watching Malachi Toney. So Texas A&M is going to have to stop that duo. Miami's not a huge rushing team. They can run the ball, not great at it, and they have other receivers, but the game is pretty much Beck to Toney. That's how they play the game. For Texas A&M's offense, you've got Marcel Reed. So Reed is got pretty similar statistics in a way to Beck. He's got 2,900 passing yards, 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, just like Beck. Where they differ is completion percentage. Reed only throws for 61.4% and running the ball. Marcel Reed is a much greater threat to run the ball than Carson Beck is. He's rushed for 466 yards on the season, 6 touchdowns. When Reed throws the ball, he has got 2 really good targets to throw to. He's got Casey Concepcion, the transfer from NC State, who's been absolutely electric all season, both receiving, a little bit of running, and in the return game. And you've got Mario Craver. Concepcion has 57 receptions, 886 yards, 9 touchdowns. He's also got 460 yards in punt returning and 2 touchdowns on punt returns. Craver has 52 catches, 825 yards. Now, in this game, both offensive lines are really good. So you're going to have really good matchup between these pass rushes, these good defenses, and the offensive lines. Let me tell you how I think this game is going to be decided. The quarterbacks will decide this game. And what I mean by that is Carson Beck and Marcel Reed both have really high highs and really low lows. You've seen over the last couple of seasons, Carson Beck has had games where he's thrown 3, 4 interceptions, where it just seems like he just can't stop throwing picks. You've had some instances this season where Miami just fell apart. And you've also seen that with Marcel Reed. I mean, if you watch the first half of the South Carolina game, Marcel Reed had a mind-boggling fumble, threw an interception in the end zone, and threw another interception where I was like, where are you throwing to? He had a really bad first half. Well, then he brings Texas A&M all the way back from down 30-3, wins that game, throws for over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. It's kind of similar to what Carson Beck did at Georgia last year. Alabama's just pummeling Georgia. And then Carson Beck comes out and looks like Peyton Manning in the second half, nearly brings Georgia back to win that game. I mean, he does bring them ahead of Alabama till the last second Ryan Williams ballet dance touchdown. So let me tell you why I think that's going to decide this game. Both quarterbacks, despite the good offensive lines, are probably going to be under a lot of pressure. But for Carson Beck, Miami has not played in front of a crowd like he's going to play in front of at Kyle Field all season. The biggest crowd that they've played in front of was Florida State. So you're talking about 70,000 people. There's over 100,000 people at Kyle Field. You know, the whole 12th man. They're going to be loud. This is a playoff game. They are finally in the playoff after years and years and years of 8-win seasons. Carson Beck is going to have the weight of the world on his shoulders. And not to mention, okay, so not only does Texas A&M have a great pass rush, you cannot get in third down, third and long against Texas A&M. Texas A&M has the number one third down defense in the country. They are particularly good in third and long. Now, that shouldn't come as a surprise. Most teams are probably better in third and long. But when you have that kind of pass rush, it just ramps up their third down defense. Now, both these teams kind of act like their quarterbacks in a way. You've had games where Texas A&M looked fantastic. You've had the South Carolina game. The entire team looked like they had something wrong in the first half. You had guys dropping passes. You had the turnovers. They couldn't stop South Carolina to save their lives. They come out in the second half and totally dominate the game. Okay, well, Miami, you've had some inexplicable games that have led to close losses, largely due to turnovers. So both these teams are streaky. Do anybody out there, do you trust Miami or Texas A&M, both this year and in the past? They have proven track records over the last several years of not coming up in big situations. You have some situations with Mario Cristobal making some questionable decisions the last few years, some clock management issues. You've had Texas A&M. I mean, it's become a running joke on SEC Shorts about not coming up in these big situations, having disappointing seasons. So, with two streaky quarterbacks, two great pass rushes, a lot of pressure, and two inconsistent teams, where do I come out on? I personally think when I just look at the two teams, I think Miami might be a better team. I think Miami ended the season much better than Texas A&M did. When Miami is up, there were times early in the season when I was just doing my own rankings for fun. I had Miami as the number one team in the country for a couple weeks. Now, obviously, then they go and lose a close game to Louisville, lose an overtime game to SMU. I do not call Miami the number one team in the country anymore. However, Texas A&M did not look good down the stretch. You had the South Carolina issue, and in the last week of the season, you're up on Texas, and then let Texas just take over the second half and win that game. But in this game, at Kyle Field, where you have 102,000 screaming, yelling Aggie fans, you've got a quarterback with a history of turning the ball over in high-pressure situations. You've got a team, Miami. They also struggle with pre-snap penalties. Do you think it's going to be easy to hear and make pre-snap adjustments at Kyle Field? Absolutely not. They are also not used to playing in front of a crowd that big. I think with all that said, this game is going to come down to which quarterback turns the ball over more. And I think that's going to be Carson Beck. It could be Marcel Reed. I hope Carson Beck, for his sake as a former Georgia player, doesn't implode. I think he's a good quarterback. However, I think in this situation, who do I think is more likely to have the turnovers? I think it's going to be Miami. I'm taking Texas A&M in this game. I'm taking the home field advantage. I'm taking the playmakers on offense. Yes, I think Miami is going to do a good job. I think they're going to contain Marcel Reed. They're not going to just let him run free because of that great defense. But ultimately, I think Texas A&M wins the game and goes on to the second round to play Ohio State. So these were two games that I think are going to be really close. Now I'm going to talk about two games that I think are not going to be really close. You've got Ole Miss and Tulane playing a rematch. We'll talk about that game first. These teams have a long history. They've played each other many times. And for the last 40 years, it's been all Ole Miss. Ole Miss is on a 14-game win streak against Tulane. The last time they played, they crushed the Green Wave, 45-10 in that game. Tulane did not score a touchdown until the fourth quarter. In that game, Ole Miss had 548 yards of offense. Trinidad Chambliss, the quarterback, was responsible for most of those yards. He threw for 307 yards and ran for 112. Ironically, also Tulane's quarterback, Jake Retzlaff, not only led his team in passing yards, he also led his team in rushing yards. The difference was the level of success. Retzlaff threw for 56 yards and rushed for 51. This is not who Tulane wanted to see in the playoff. Tulane struggles defensively. They have the 124th ranked passing defense. You don't want to have the 124th ranked passing defense when you're going against Ole Miss, the third ranked passing offense. Tulane, the one way that I could see Tulane making this a game. Tulane is one of the top 10 teams in the country in turnover margin. That in and of itself is not enough to make this a game. What could make it a game is with the chaos surrounding Lane Kiffin. The way he left Ole Miss. You've got coaches who have already left. You've got coaches currently on Ole Miss's staff who are going to leave when the season's over. If the team is not locked in, if the coaches are not locked in, this could become a problem. You saw there were internet rumors this week that a Trinidad Chambliss might not play in the game. Now, that seems to just be, again, rumors based off some comments he made indicating that if the NCAA does grant him a waiver to play another year, that he might transfer to another school. And obviously there's speculation it might be LSU with Lane Kiffin. So if this team is not laser focused, this is Pete Golding's first game as head coach of Ole Miss, then it is possible that Tulane takes advantage and forces a lot of turnovers. However, Pete Golding has a lot better team. They have home field advantage. I would expect the fans in Oxford to be very angry and very loud after the way Kiffin left. And I just don't see a way that Tulane wins this game. I actually think Tulane might be the worst team in this playoff field. Yes, they have played some Power 4 teams other than Ole Miss. They have a win over Duke, who's the ACC champion. But you've also got two losses, one of those being to the University of Texas San Antonio Roadrunners, who are 6-6. Tulane lost that game by a score of 48-26. I don't see a lot of playoff teams losing to Texas San Antonio 48-26. I just don't think this team has enough defense. I think they're going to be out really quick. Now, shifting to the other game with James Madison, statistically, on paper, if it wasn't for the Lane Kiffin flux in Ole Miss, I would say James Madison has a better chance at beating Oregon than Tulane has at beating Ole Miss. Now, that is kind of like saying you have a better chance of dunking in the NBA than your 5-year-old son has. But yes, James Madison. So you're saying there's a chance. Yes, James Madison, you have about 1% of a chance to beat Oregon. You look at James Madison statistically, they have the second-ranked defense in yards per game, 12th passing defense, second rushing defense. They're 10th in points per game. They have a good defense. They're 5th in rushing yards, 10th in points per game. They don't throw the ball particularly well, but James Madison hasn't played very many power conference teams. They played Louisville, lost to Louisville 28-14. Louisville's an 8-4 team that does have the win over Miami. Now, they did beat Washington State by 4 points, who gave Ole Miss a tough game. Ole Miss only won that game by 3 points. Other than that, the Dukes have kind of just been beating up on smaller teams. This is going to be a humongous step up in competition. Oregon is 4th in total defense, 3rd in pass defense, 8th in points per game. They're also good on offense, 13th in total offense, 9th in points per game. You look at Oregon's resume, their best games have been, they got a 15-point win over USC, 12-point win over Washington, and they've got a close win over Iowa. Oregon's lone loss is the 10-point loss at home to the number 1 team, Indiana. Now, I have been a little bit wary of Oregon at times this season. They warrant their 5th seeding, but during the middle of the year, they were a little suspect to me. Now, they've kind of cleaned that up here at the end of the season, had some of their best wins late in the year. I think Oregon's Dante Moore is really efficient. You look at his stat line, Dante Moore's got 2,733 yards, 24 touchdowns, just 6 interceptions, 72.5 completion percentage. On the flip side of that, James Madison, Barnett's got 2,500 yards, 21 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, less than a 60% completion percentage. Where James Madison does their damage is running the ball. Ultimately, this game is in Eugene, it's at Oregon and Autzen Stadium. I just don't see a chance for James Madison to win. I have been critical at times of Dan Lanning's decision-making in some of these games. You see him go for it on 4th down in some situations over the last few seasons that end up costing them. They've lost games at times because of some of his decisions. I think he's a little overly aggressive. I just don't think Dan Lanning, coming from the Kirby Smart school of coaching, the intensity that Dan Lanning has, the advantage in talent Oregon has, I just don't see James Madison winning this game. I think this is going to be a slam dunk. I don't really know why we're putting this as the primetime game other than Oregon being the 5th seed, but I think this is going to be a short stay for James Madison. Now you say, okay, well, you just took our 2 Cinderellas away. Are there any teams that maybe aren't the favorites that I could see winning the college football playoff? No. I mean, to me, the national champion is almost certainly going to come from the top 3 seeds, Indiana, Ohio State, Georgia. I could see 4 through 6 making a run, maybe even winning the national championship. Texas Tech, Oregon, and Ole Miss. The problem with Ole Miss, before all of this chaos, I would have said Ole Miss has a chance to win the national championship. Maybe they still do. But this is why college football, really all sports, but college football has to change this window. The way that the transfer portal works, having multiple transfer windows, teams are firing their coaches a few games into the season, halfway through the season. Then they're on this hunt for another coach so they can hurry up and get a good coach before the other teams and they can get to recruiting. You should not be able to speak to a coach until their season is over. You should not even be able to say, I am interested in this coach. You should have no contact whatsoever until the season is over. You want to fire your head coach and hire a new one? You want to hire a coach that's on a championship team? Well, then you have to wait. And LSU just threw its money around and has now completely derailed Ole Miss's season. A rival in the same conference. It's absurd to me that you would allow LSU to essentially tamper with Ole Miss. You have a team, they're having the best season Ole Miss has had in its entire history, or one of the best seasons it's had in its entire history. These kids have a chance to win the national championship. And what does Lane Kiffin do? Drags them along for weeks, turns this into a media fiasco, and then goes to LSU and then tries to take all the assistant coaches. This is tragic to me for Ole Miss. And it is directly because college football does not have a rule regarding the calendar, regarding when you're allowed to talk to coaches. I don't want to get into a lot the Lane Kiffin decision, whether he should or should not have gone to LSU. But to me, do not come at me as a coach telling me to finish, be committed to this program, and then you can leave during the season. You can take a job with a rival and you don't finish what you started. And yes, he's going to say, well, I wanted to coach the college football playoff and Ole Miss wouldn't let me. I wouldn't let you either. You've got one foot out the door. You're coaching for one of my rivals. I don't want you coaching the playoff. This has got to be stopped. It's really sad to see. And now you've got players thinking about transferring instead of thinking about the national championship game. We have got to get a handle on the way the transfer portal works. Back to the playoff. Could I possibly see Miami, Alabama, Texas A&M surprising some people, making a run? Sure, they're good teams. I could see that. But to me, you have tiers. You have the top 3 teams are far and away the most likely to win the college football playoff. You have the next tier, Texas Tech and Oregon, to a lesser extent Ole Miss. They have a legitimate shot to win the national championship. I don't really know what we're looking at when you compare Texas Tech to some of these other power conference teams. I think Texas Tech is a really good team. I don't know what they're going to look like when they play the Big Ten and the SEC. It's just really hard to tell on this side of it. I don't know how Oregon is going to do in a rematch with Indiana if they have one. Right now, I'm leaning towards picking Texas Tech. I haven't even decided for sure who I'm picking in that game yet. So if you ask me who can win the national championship, it's going to come from one of the top 6 seeds. It's probably going to come from one of the top 5 seeds. And if to be more realistic, it's probably coming from one of the top 3 seeds. Now, if you could do me a favor, if you enjoyed this podcast, go ahead and hit like, subscribe, share it with your friends. I've got a YouTube channel. You can follow me there. We have a breakdown of the Oklahoma-Alabama game on YouTube there. Also have some funny shorts with some dang good dogs. Now, going forward on Tuesday, I'm going to talk about the games that happened this weekend. We'll talk about the playoff going forward. Who do I think is going to win the playoff? And also talk about, will the bye weeks, there's a lot of discussion about, are the bye weeks hurting teams in the playoff? So I'll break that down and give you my picks going forward. On Thursday, that's Christmas. So we're not going to have a show on Thursday. Probably put that show out on Friday instead. Might have a special guest on that show. So I hope you tune in. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Hope you enjoy the playoff games. Be sure to join my playoff bracket challenge on ncaa.com. We've got a group called Nate's Takes. It's a public group you can join. Love to see who you guys are going to pick. And be sure to comment. Let me know your feedback. Let me know if you agree with my picks, what your picks are going to be. So thanks for listening and hope you'll tune in on Tuesday. This is Sports Takes with Nate Skates. No spin, just straight sports.